Black CEO's mother publicly humiliated by billionaire white family, then he cancels the $900 million deal. The words echoed off the gallery walls like a gunshot. Derek Cole froze mid-step. His mother's voice, sharp with embarrassment, cracked through the murmuring crowd. I said I wasn't the help. She stood beside a marble sculpture, dressed in soft gray silk. Elegant. Understated. The same way she'd raised him, quiet pride over flashy defiance. But her hand was clenched around her purse strap, knuckles pale. The billionaire's wife, Francine Walsh, was squinting at her like she'd found a stain on a napkin. Her voice curled like smoke. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just assumed, well, you were standing so close to the food. You must understand how it looked. Laughter. Muted, polite, poisonous. Derek turned slowly toward the source. Francine's husband, Marshall, didn't even try to hide his grin. Derek's stomach turned cold. The kind of cold that comes right before a storm. All around them, investors, politicians, board members, people who shook his hand with both of theirs 5 minutes ago, were pretending not to watch while watching everything. His mother stared straight ahead. Still. Too still. Ma, Derek said, voice low. He reached for her. She didn't flinch. But her eyes, those deep, stubborn eyes, met his, and there was something there he hadn't seen in years. Not since they were scraping change for groceries and someone called her girl in front of him. He turned to Marshall Walsh, whose lips were pursed like he was already bored of the moment. Derek's voice cut through the chatter. Marshall. We're done. Marshall blinked. Done with what? The deal, Derek said. $900 million. Off the table. The silence was sudden and heavy. You're not serious, Francine said. Derek stepped closer, his voice like steel under velvet. I don't do business with people who humiliate my mother. Now get out of my face before I forget I'm wearing a suit. A dozen phones had come out. Cameras flashed. A low ripple of voices surged around them. Francine's mouth opened. Closed. Marshall looked like he'd swallowed glass. His lawyer stepped forward, hand raised. And then Derek asked the one question that froze everyone. Or do you want me to tell the room what you said in Aspen? Francine went pale. Marshall took one step back. His mother finally spoke, soft and steady, let's go home, baby. They left without looking back. But what had he heard in Aspen? And how had it come to this? 10 months earlier, the air outside Derek Cole's Midtown office was thick with August heat. Inside, it was worse. Not because of the temperature, his office was a glass box cooled by silence and six-figure air conditioning, but because he was sitting in front of an untouched glass of whiskey, thinking about funerals. He wasn't at one, not yet. But something had died in him anyway. Tell me you're not going to that goddamn gala, said Mel, his best friend since college and his chief operating officer. They've already disrespected you twice. I know, Derek said. So why the hell? Because it's $900 million. Because I've got 5,000 employees and 2 more startups waiting on this merger to go through. He didn't say the rest. Didn't say, because I'm tired of being the only black man in the room and still having to prove I belong. Mel sat down across from him, arms crossed. They want your product, Derek. You don't need to smile for people who think they're doing you a favor. They don't think that. They know I'm the future. They just hate what I look like. The words tasted bitter. But he didn't walk them back. He meant them. He tapped the glass in front of him. Ice clinked. I'm going, he said. But I'm bringing my mother. Mel raised an eyebrow. That woman hasn't been to a company event in 5 years. She asked. Mel was quiet for a beat, then nodded. All right. If you're going to walk into a snake pit, at least bring the one person who taught you how to fight. Derek smiled, just barely. She taught me to survive. And to burn the place down if they cross the line. He didn't laugh. He just looked out the window, where the city lights flickered like warning signs. He had no idea how right Mel would be. That night, Derek stopped by his mother's brownstone in Harlem. Same one she'd refused to move out of, even when he offered her a penthouse overlooking Central Park. High ceilings don't fix old bones, she'd said once. I'll die where your father lived. He found her on the front stoop, watering her potted basil with an old coffee mug. You're early, she said, smiling without turning. I missed your voice. She handed him the mug. Then sit down and stop looking like you just fired Jesus. He laughed, finally. I didn't fire anyone today. That's a first. They sat together for a while, saying nothing. A car passed. Kids laughed across the street. Then she said, I know who they are, Derek. He looked at her. That family. Walsh. They think we're lucky to be in the room. You don't have to come. I want to. He was quiet. I've spent 30 years watching you work for things they were born into. If you're going to stand in that room, I'll be right there beside you. Derek swallowed the lump in his throat. You ever think we should have taken the easier route? Easier's never better. You're not in this to blend in. You're in this to change the damn paint. He smiled. You sound like Dad. I am your dad, she said, smirking. And your mom. Twice the attitude. They laughed, and for a moment the heaviness lifted. But that moment wouldn't last. Something was waiting in that gallery. And it would make sure Derek never saw the Walsh family the same way again. He just didn't know it yet. The gallery was all sharp glass and soft jazz. Waiters drifted through the space like whispers, carrying tiny food that cost more than rent in most neighborhoods. Derek adjusted the cuff of his tailored jacket and glanced at his mother beside him. Camille Cole wore a slate-gray wrap dress, simple pearls, and a quiet look that said I've survived worse than this. She had raised him alone, working double shifts in pediatrics at Mount Sinai, putting him through prep school with every spare dollar she had. Now here they were, on the arm of a man who owned one of the fastest-growing tech companies in America, surrounded by people who pretended not to notice he was the only black face in the lineup of executives. She leaned in close. How long we gotta stay before you can say you made your appearance? Long enough for them to think we're playing their game. Then smile, baby. But keep your hands clean. You don't need their dirt on your skin. He gave her a soft nod. Then the Walshes arrived. Marshall Walsh, blonde, broad, and broadcast handsome, made his way through the crowd like a shark that learned how to smirk. Francine trailed behind, sharp-nosed and draped in silk that screamed money. They'd inherited old railroad wealth and multiplied it through hedge funds, lobbying, and careful marriages. Marshall had shaken Derek's hand once, years ago, at a Stanford alumni event. Back then, he'd called him a real American success story. It was supposed to be a compliment. Tonight, Marshall approached with a glint in his eye, and Derek immediately felt the wall go up inside him. Derek, he said with a teeth-showing smile, you made it. And this must be my mother, Derek said. Camille Cole. Francine's smile stiffened. How lovely, she said, voice too smooth. Camille extended her hand. Nice to meet you. Francine hesitated half a second too long before taking it. Then her eyes flicked down Camille's outfit, and Derek saw it, the calculation. The same look waitresses get from country club members. The same cold judgment Camille used to get in the break room when white nurses whispered about how she acted like she owned the place. Francine looked up. I was just saying to Marshall, wasn't she the one by the catering table earlier? Derek blinked. What? You were helping serve, weren't you? Francine asked Camille, smiling wider now. The hors d'oeuvres. I thought you were one of the staff. Camille's voice was flat. No. I was getting a plate. Oh, I didn't mean, Francine touched her chest in mock apology. It was just, you blended in so well. I honestly thought, well, you know what I mean. Derek's hand balled into a fist at his side. Camille didn't look at him. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. You thought I was the help because I'm black. It's fine. Say what you meant. The air in the room shifted. Like someone had turned the oxygen down. Marshall cleared his throat. I'm sure Francine didn't mean to. She did, Derek said. She meant every word. Francine blinked, confused. I think you're being a little sensitive. Derek turned to face her fully. The $900 million deal? The acquisition? It's off. Silence hit like thunder. A couple in tuxedos nearby actually turned to stare. Francine looked stunned. You can't be serious. Oh, I can. He glanced at his mother. Come on, Ma. They began walking toward the exit. Phones came out. Voices rose. People started murmuring to each other. Marshall tried to move after them, but security, already alert to the tension, subtly stepped between them. Francine called out, You're throwing away everything over a misunderstanding? Derek stopped. Turned. And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, Should I repeat what I heard you say in Aspen, Francine? That froze her. She paled. Marshall's face tightened like a rope pulling too hard on one side. Derek didn't wait for an answer. He walked out into the night, his mother beside him. Back in Harlem, Camille made tea like nothing had happened. Chamomile or peppermint? She asked. Derek sat at the table, still wearing his suit. Whichever keeps me from throwing a chair through a window. She poured the peppermint. I'm sorry, he said after a long silence. For what? For bringing you there. For not, I should have said something earlier. The second she opened her mouth. Camille looked up from the kettle, eyes soft. You did the right thing. But you don't need to protect me, Derek. I've heard worse in hospital waiting rooms. That doesn't mean you should have to hear it again. No, she said. But I raised a son who knows when to walk away. Who knows when something is too expensive, even if the price tag says success. That's worth something. He looked at her for a long moment. You think this ruins everything? Camille sat down across from him and stirred her tea. That depends. On what? On what you heard in Aspen. He didn't answer right away. He hadn't told anyone. Not even Mel. Because what he heard wasn't just disgusting. It was dangerous. I'll tell you, he said. But not tonight. She nodded, patient. He took a sip of tea, stared at the steam rising. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be walked back. And he had a feeling this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Especially if the Walshes realized what he really knew. Derek didn't sleep. The words from that night kept circling his mind like wolves. You blended in so well. I honestly thought. Should I repeat what I heard you say in Aspen? He hadn't meant to say it out loud. Not in front of everyone. Not like that. But the words had come from somewhere deeper than anger. Somewhere bone deep. And now they were out in the world, turning heads, drawing questions. By morning, the fallout had already begun. Mel called at 6:03 a.m. You're trending, she said. Number 3 on X, number 7 on LinkedIn. CNN just pushed an alert. I figured. You said something about Aspen, she continued. Want to tell me what the hell that was? He closed his eyes, head pressed to the wall of his apartment. The sun hadn't even fully come up yet, but already the city buzzed beneath his penthouse window. I heard something. Last year. When I was in the Walsh Lodge for those merger talks. Something like what? He hesitated. Something that makes this more than just a PR problem. Mel exhaled sharply. Derek. If you've got something, I need to know. Because right now, every reporter and board member in the country is asking why a $900 million deal just evaporated over a racist comment. It wasn't just racist, he said quietly. It was criminal. Silence. Come over, he said. 30 minutes later, Mel stepped into Derek's apartment with a bag of bagels, 2 coffees, and eyes sharper than usual. All right, she said, setting everything down on the kitchen island. Start talking. He didn't make her wait. A year ago, he said, I was in Aspen for 2 nights. The Walshes hosted a closed-door summit. Just their family and me, trying to convince me to take the deal, flatter me, make it look like a partnership. After dinner, I stepped out to call my mom. Went down the hall. Mel sat down, silent. When I was walking back, I passed Marshall's study. Door was cracked open. He didn't see me. He was talking to someone on speaker. I don't know who. I only caught a few seconds. Derek took a breath, the memory returning in pieces, sharp and clear. He said, we'll take the tech, keep him on paper for a while to smooth it out. But once the dust settles, we'll clean house. You know how it goes. Let the black guy open the door, then slam it behind him. Mel's jaw tightened. Derek continued. He laughed. Then said something like, we'll leave him with a severance package and a pat on the head. One more social experiment in capitalism. White money always wins. Mel stood up. Jesus. I stood there, frozen. I should have recorded it, but I was too shocked. I left the next morning. Didn't say anything. I convinced myself maybe I'd misheard, maybe I needed the deal more than my pride. He looked at her. But then last night happened. And I realized, no. They never wanted me as a partner. Just a puppet. Someone they could parade around until they were ready to throw him out. Mel crossed her arms. And now they're panicking, trying to figure out what you heard. He nodded. Exactly. Do we have anything else? Paper trails? Emails? Anything that backs this up? No. But I'm betting Francine's guilty conscience will make her trip. People like her always do. Mel sat back down. Okay. Then we use that. You keep quiet for now. Let the press go wild. Let them beg for the story. And when the time's right, we burn them with it. She looked him in the eye. You sure you're ready for that? Derek didn't answer. He just stared out the window at the city sprawling below. Later that day, Derek met with his legal team. A group of sharp-suited professionals who didn't ask why he canceled the deal, only how to cover it. We'll send a formal withdrawal, said Marla, his lead counsel. No specifics. Just say there were irreconcilable differences in business values. And if they threaten breach? Someone asked. They won't, Derek said. They'll stay quiet, because they know I have something. That silenced the room. After the meeting, Derek sat in his private office, staring at the merger documents he no longer needed. 900 million. 3 years of work. Gone. But instead of regret, there was something else rising in him. Resolve. The Walshes thought they could humiliate his mother, steal his company, and erase him from the equation. They thought he'd smile through it. Shake their hands and thank them for the table scraps. They were wrong. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A clipped voice, male, cold, you should be careful, Mr. Cole. Not everything needs to be made public. The line went dead. Derek stared at the phone. There it was. The first threat. He turned to the window, city lights rising again. The war had started. And he was ready for it. Derek stared at the phone for a long time after the call ended. No caller ID. No voice he recognized. Just a cold warning dropped like a coin into his lap. He played the words back in his head. You should be careful, Mr. Cole. Not everything needs to be made public. He wasn't rattled, not yet. But there was a pressure in his chest now, tight and familiar. The kind you feel right before a hard hit in a football game. Or walking into a boardroom where every smile is hiding a knife. He called Mel. She picked up before the first ring finished. Yeah? Just got a call. Blocked number. Threat. You record it? No. Damn. There was a pause. She didn't ask if he was okay. Didn't need to. Security, she asked. Already on it, he said. I'll triple it. I'll notify the board. Not about the call, just that we're anticipating retaliation. Good. She was quiet for a moment. Then, they're scared, and they're going to try to make this ugly. He let that sit in the silence. Then we make it uglier, he said. The next day, Derek met with PR. His head of comms, Jenna, had dark circles under her eyes and a phone that hadn't stopped vibrating since she walked in. We've got 4 narratives forming in the media, she said, pulling up a document on her tablet. 1, you overreacted to a misunderstanding. 2, you're using this for clout. 3, you walked out of a historic deal for personal reasons. And 4, the one we're pushing, you stood up to public disrespect with principle. Derek glanced at the screen. Is it working? Too early to tell. But there's momentum. Fast Company and Bloomberg are hinting at a deeper story. He leaned back in his chair. Let them hint. I want them hungry. Jenna looked up. They're asking about your mom. He froze. What about her? They want interviews. Pictures. A profile. No. Derek. She's not a story. She's my mother. Jenna held up her hands. Understood. But the tension was rising. Fast. Later that afternoon, a headline dropped like a hammer. Walsh family under fire after CEO's mother allegedly mistaken for staff. The word allegedly hung in the air like a bad smell. But the story was out. Derek sat alone in his office reading the comments. Some were supportive. Most were cynical. A few were flat-out racist. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time, he hit record before he answered. Derek Cole, he said flatly. No voice. Just breathing. Slow and deliberate. Then a whisper, walk away while you still can. Click. The recording saved automatically. He forwarded it to Mel with a single line. We escalate. Now. That night, he returned to Harlem. His mother was already on the porch, a book in her lap, a half-finished glass of wine beside her. You've been on every news channel today, she said without looking up. I know. You're on the Shade Room, too. Is that what you meant by going viral? He smiled faintly. Something like that. She closed her book. You bring trouble to my stoop, Derek? Not yet. But it's coming. Camille nodded, like she'd already expected that. Then you better tell me what you're planning. He sat down next to her. You remember that woman who used to run HR for the Walsh Foundation? Her eyes narrowed. The one who disappeared after that lawsuit settlement? She messaged me today. Said she has proof of racial discrimination inside the company. Hidden memos. HR complaints. Stuff that never made it to court. Camille was silent. She's scared, Derek said. But she wants to talk. Under protection. And you believe her? I do. Camille picked up her wine, took a small sip. Good. Because if you're going to take these people on, you need more than anger. You need receipts. He looked at her. You think I'm doing the right thing? She didn't answer right away. Then she turned to him, her voice low and firm. I think you were born for this. But don't let the fight turn you into them. I won't. You say that now. He nodded slowly. They threaten me. She didn't flinch. Then they're scared. And for the first time that week, Derek felt something other than rage. He felt power. The next morning, Derek met with Mel in a secured office offsite. Just the two of them, plus the woman from the foundation, Clarissa Thomas. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, quiet. She kept her back straight, her voice calm. But her hands shook when she passed over the flash drive. I kept everything, she said. They didn't know. But I printed copies. Took screenshots. Backed them up in 4 places. What's on here? Mel asked. Clarissa looked at Derek. A plan, she said. To force you out of your own company. Before the ink on the merger was dry. They didn't just want your tech, Mr. Cole. They wanted to erase you from it. Derek stared at the drive. Clarissa leaned forward. And I have a recording. From Marshall. Same kind of thing you heard in Aspen. But this time? I got it on tape. Silence filled the room. Derek took the flash drive in his hands. Felt its weight. Small. Cold. Mel smiled slowly. Well, now we've got teeth. Clarissa's voice dropped. You sure you want this smoke? Derek looked at her, then Mel, then down at the drive. They came for my name. My work. And my mother. He met Clarissa's gaze. Steady. Unflinching. They have no idea who they're messing with. The flash drive sat between Derek's fingers like a lit fuse. He turned it over, slow and deliberate, watching the light catch on the polished black surface. Mel was already plugging it into her laptop, eyes locked on the screen. Clarissa sat rigid across from them, knuckles white against the arms of her chair. The room was sealed. No windows. Signal blocked. Just concrete, LED lights, and truth waiting to be exposed. Mel scanned the folder structure. Jesus. There's hundreds of files. Check the audio, Derek said. She clicked through a few folders labeled Internal Memo Archive, Legal, Suppressed, Voice Notes, 2024. Then she found it. Marshall recording.wave. Mel double-clicked. Static. Then a rustling sound. A male voice, clear and unmistakable. Marshall Walsh. Clarissa, this is off the record, yeah? I mean, look, Derek's a smart kid. That's why we picked him. Gives the right look. Checks the right boxes. But once this goes public, we let the lawyers finish him off. You keep the brand. Kill the face. End of story. A pause. A laugh. Marshall Walsh. It's not personal. It's capitalism. Let the black guy open the door, then we change the locks. The audio cut. Nobody spoke. Clarissa's breathing was shallow. Mel sat back in her chair and whispered, we got him. Derek didn't move. His jaw was tight. He'd heard the words before, versions of them, whispered in corners and rapped in polite tones. But never like this. Never this raw, this recorded, this clear. Clarissa broke the silence. There's more. Emails. Strategy decks. They had a whole PR roadmap prepared for the moment they cut you loose. Mel swiveled her screen toward Derek. The file was titled Post-Acquisition Realignment, Phase 2. He opened it. Slide 1, Transition Plan. Slide 2, Rebranding under Walsh Global. Slide 3, CEO Departure Timeline, Confidential. Slide 4, a bullet point. Public reason, Leadership Refocus. Private reason, Expendable Founder. And then Derek saw it. Slide 10. A photo of him, smiling in a company retreat photo. Caption beneath it. Useful. Until he isn't. He stood. Walked to the other side of the room. Mel looked up. We take it to the press. Wall Street Journal. ProPublica. We do this carefully. No, Derek said, back turned. No more careful. Mel frowned. We have to be smart. We've been smart, he said. They built an empire on people like me being careful. He turned back. They want war? Fine. We hit them publicly. Directly. Clarissa hesitated. They'll come after me. I'll protect you, Derek said. You've got my lawyers now. My team. Full NDA reversal and whistleblower protection. No one's touching you. Mel nodded slowly. Okay. So what's the move? We hold a press conference, Derek said. We show the tape. The emails. Everything. Live? Mel asked, surprised. Live. No edits. No filters. Let the world hear what they said. Mel leaned forward. This'll torch the deal forever. Good, Derek said. 2 days later, the venue was locked. A private auditorium in Manhattan. Full tech setup. Independent media outlets invited. Derek's team called it a corporate accountability address. But everyone watching would know what it really was. A reckoning. On the day of the conference, Derek arrived early. He wore a navy suit. No tie. Just clean lines, calm eyes, and the kind of focus that comes from years of swallowing rage. Camille met him backstage. She'd insisted on coming. You nervous? She asked, adjusting his collar. No. You look it. I'm not. Liar. He smiled faintly. I got this. She stepped back, looked at him the way only a mother can. Then go make them listen. The lights dimmed. Cameras rolled. Derek stepped up to the podium. No notes. Just him and the truth. Good afternoon, he began, voice steady. My name is Derek Cole. I'm the founder and former CEO of Sable Systems. He paused. I'm here to tell you why I walked away from a $900 million deal. The room held its breath. 2 weeks ago, my mother, Camille Cole, was publicly humiliated by Francine Walsh at a private gallery event. She was mistaken for staff. Treated like a servant. In front of the entire investor class of New York. A ripple through the audience. Pen scratched. Camera zoomed. I ended the deal on the spot. But that wasn't the whole story. He nodded to the tech operator. The recording played. Useful. Until he isn't. Gasps. Murmurs. Phones held high. Reporters typing furiously. Derek kept going. This wasn't just disrespect. This was exploitation. Fraud. Deception at the highest level of corporate America. He laid out the documents. The deck slides. The email excerpts. Everything Clarissa had uncovered. The strategy. The plan to push him out. To the people watching, this isn't just about me. It's about every young founder who gets handed a check and a leash. Every black entrepreneur told to smile for the camera and stay out of the boardroom. He looked into the lens. To the Walsh family, you built your house on old money and broken backs. I'm not afraid of either. He stepped back from the podium. I'm done opening doors for people who lock them behind me. He walked off stage. The applause was immediate, and it wasn't polite. It was thunder. That night, every major news outlet led with the story. The audio went viral in hours. SEC inquiries launched. Walsh stocks dipped 12 points by morning. Clarissa filed for federal whistleblower protection. And Derek? He sat at his mother's table again, a plate of her peach cobbler in front of him. She slid a fork across the table. You really did it. I didn't have a choice. She smiled. You always have a choice. You just finally picked you. They ate in silence for a while. Then Camille asked, what now? Derek leaned back, staring out the window. Now, he said. Now I build something they can't touch. And this time, he wouldn't need anyone's permission. The morning after the press conference, Derek's inbox was a war zone. Hundreds of messages flooded in, some from investors, others from strangers. Journalists begged for exclusives. Executives offered private apologies wrapped in self-preservation. A few tried to distance themselves from the Walshes like rats leaving a burning ship. Derek ignored most of it. He focused on the ones that mattered, like the email from a black venture capitalist he'd never met. You just made it easier for the next kid who looks like us. If you ever want to build something bigger, I've got capital and no leash. That one he saved. His phone buzzed. Mel again. You ready for the board call? She asked. Derek glanced at the clock. Let's get it over with. Just remember, Mel added, they're not calling to check on your health. They're calling to ask if you've torched their stock options. He smiled faintly. Good. The board meeting was virtual. 7 boxes on the screen, each one cleaner, whiter, and tenser than the last. Derek, said Ken Abrams, the chairman. Quite the performance yesterday. I call it telling the truth. Yes, well, truth comes at a cost. We've already lost 3 institutional backers. Do you have any idea? I'm not going to apologize, Derek cut in. Let's save time. Another board member, Lucia Kwan, leaned forward. This was personal. We get that. But this is business. You cost the company nearly $1 billion in valuation. No, Derek said calmly. They did. I exposed it. A silence fell. Then one of the quieter members, Anthony Wells, an old hedge fund guy who'd stayed on the board mostly for optics, cleared his throat. I have to ask, he said. What's your plan now? What does Sable become without the deal? Derek didn't hesitate. Independent. Black-owned. And 10 times more dangerous to companies like Walsh Global than we ever were as their pet. Lucia exhaled sharply, annoyed. Ken raised a hand to calm things down. Let's be real, he said. You went nuclear. You scared people. That's not how legacy companies operate. Derek stared at him. Good. Then maybe we don't become a legacy company. Maybe we build something that doesn't need an apology to exist. Ken paused. And if the Walsh family sues? Let them. He ended the call. By the end of the week, the first retaliations arrived. An anonymous article in Forbes, filled with thinly veiled critiques, volatile leadership, emotional decision-making, founder syndrome. No author name. No sources. But Derek knew exactly where it came from. He posted 3 words on his personal X account. Try me next. 1 million impressions in 10 minutes. Then something unexpected happened. More whistleblowers came forward. From other companies. From nonprofits the Walshes funded. From politicians they courted. Stories. Screenshots. Memos. Patterns of abuse hidden under money and charm. Mel met him at his apartment 2 days later, a laptop full of evidence under her arm. We're past corporate drama, she said. This is a takedown. Derek looked through the files. Most of it wasn't shocking anymore. Just confirming what he'd always known, the rot was deep. Still, one message hit different. It came from a woman named Jordan Tate, who worked as a project coordinator at Walsh Global's diversity initiative. She sent a voice memo. I sat in a room where they laughed about putting your mother's photo on a flyer next to the Walsh Foundation logo. Said it was great optics, her next to their charity execs. Like they didn't just insult her to her face. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do then. But I know now. Derek stared out the window. They wanted to use her pain as marketing, he said quietly. Mel didn't say anything. He stood slowly. Get Clarissa on the phone. And Jordan. We're doing a documentary. Mel blinked. A what? We tell the whole story. All of it. Start to finish. No media gatekeepers. No whitewashed edits. I'll fund it myself. She smiled. Now that's a legacy play. The project moved fast. They hired a small independent crew. Real filmmakers. Real editors. No gloss. Just voices, receipts, and silence breaking like glass. Clarissa sat down first. Then Jordan. Then others. People with nothing to gain. People who'd been stepped over and forgotten. People who saw what the Walshes did when they thought no one was watching. The documentary was called Open the Door. Derek filmed the closing shot himself. Alone in his office. Just him and the camera. This isn't a revenge story. This is what happens when people stop playing the part they were handed. My mother taught me that silence doesn't protect anyone. And now I know, truth doesn't need permission. We're not asking anymore. We're taking the damn keys. The night the documentary dropped, Derek stood on the roof of his building, looking out at the skyline. Camille joined him a few minutes later, hands tucked into her coat. You look tired, she said. I am. You regret any of it? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, no. They stood in silence for a long time. You changed the room, baby, Camille said. Just like I told you. He smiled. Maybe. But I think I broke it, too. She looked at him. Good. Now build one they can't shut the door on. Below them, the city buzzed. Somewhere, people were watching the film for the first time. Somewhere else, lawyers were panicking. Executives sweating. Walls shaking. But up here, it was just him and his mother. And this time, no one could mistake who she was. Not the help. Not a face for a flyer. Not someone to blend into the background. She was Camille Cole. And she raised a man who walked into power, and refused to bow. By the end of the week, Open the Door had over 28 million views. It was everywhere, Twitter threads, TikTok explainers, late-night monologues, think pieces in The Atlantic. And people weren't just watching. They were angry. Organized. Activated. A trending hashtag grew overnight. Hashtag #ColeNotToken. Derek watched it happen from the same place he watched everything else now, his office. A stripped-down space with just his desk, his laptop, and a view of the city that no longer intimidated him. Mel was on the couch, scrolling through reactions on her phone. You've officially gone from CEO to symbol, she said. He didn't smile. That's dangerous. Yeah. But it's also powerful. She tossed her phone on the table and leaned forward. I've been thinking. About what? You've built a company that doesn't need Wall Street's permission anymore. Your name's a movement. The deal's dead. Walsh Global is circling the drain. And you've got capital, leverage, and the public on your side. So what are we doing here still pretending like we're dodging bullets? We should be going on offense. He raised an eyebrow. You think we haven't been? She stood. Not like this. Mel walked to the window. I'm talking legacy. Not just torching one empire, but building the next. A venture fund. A media arm. Tech, education, legal protection. All black-owned. All centered around truth, equity, and ownership. Derek stared at her. You want to build an institution. I want to build the one they were afraid you'd imagine. He exhaled slowly, a weight settling in. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was reconstruction. Later that night, his mother called. I just saw you on MSNBC, she said. You look tired. You said that yesterday. Well, it's still true. He chuckled. You see the part where the anchor called me the future of ethical capitalism? Camille snorted. If they're saying that on cable news, it means somebody wants you to sit down soon. Derek's smile faded. They won't stop, Ma. Not after this. Not now. I know. He hesitated. You sure you still want to be part of this? I didn't raise you to fight alone. Her voice was steady. But there was something else there too. A quiet weariness. He knew she'd seen the threats, the hate mail, the comment sections. And still, she stayed. Thank you, he said, softer than before. Camille paused. You know what I want? What? For one of these men to sit across from me, in public, and apologize. Just once. Like they mean it. Derek looked out the window. Maybe one day. No, she said. They won't. But I'll settle for them losing everything they built off our backs. The next morning, the Walshes made their move. A formal lawsuit was filed, defamation, corporate sabotage, malicious interference. Their PR team released a carefully worded statement. While we respect the right to speak one's truth, the intentional misrepresentation of internal conversations, taken out of context, is a dangerous precedent for corporate partnerships. Derek read it with a steady pulse. No surprise. No panic. He called Mel. Let's leak the rest of the audio. You sure? They want to litigate? Let the jury hear the part where Marshall jokes about replacing black employees with AI. Mel blinked. That's in there? It's all in there. And just like that, the war escalated. Cable news ran excerpts on a loop. Walsh family lawyers scrambled. Their stock dropped another 15%. Influencers who once bragged about being sponsored by Walsh Global were scrubbing their feeds. Investors were jumping ship. And through it all, Derek stayed quiet. Measured. Focused. Until he got a call from a name he hadn't heard in years. Hello? Derek Cole, the voice said, cautious. Yes. This is Elijah Lewis. You knew my daughter, Kiana. She interned for Walsh Global last year. Derek stiffened. Yeah. I remember her. She died, Elijah said. Suicide. Last fall. The words hit hard. I'm sorry, Derek said quietly. She left notes, Elijah continued. Not everything made sense at the time. But now, after your documentary, it does. I need you to see something. Derek met Elijah the next evening in a quiet coffee shop in Bed-Stuy. The man had the worn look of someone carrying too much grief and not enough sleep. He slid a small journal across the table. Derek opened it. The handwriting was neat, almost delicate. But the words were heavy. They made me feel like a trophy. Like I didn't belong. I tried to speak up. They smiled and moved me to another department. My mentor told me to be grateful. I'm so tired. More pages. More entries. They said I was lucky to be there. But every room I walked into felt like a test I wasn't allowed to pass. And then, they told me people like me open the door so others can walk through. But I'm still stuck in the hallway. Derek closed the book. He looked at Elijah, whose eyes were glassy but hard. You've got a voice, Elijah said. She didn't. Do something with it. That night, Derek posted one more message to the world. No slick edit. No production. Just his face, lit by the city behind him. This isn't about a deal anymore. This is about the cost of silence. There are too many names we've never heard. Too many doors that close too soon. I'm not here to be the last. I'm here to make sure I'm not the only. He didn't name Kiana. Not yet. But the people who needed to know, they knew. And the ones who should have protected her? They were about to learn what it really means to be exposed. The story broke like a dam. Kiana Lewis. 22. Ivy League grad. Intern at Walsh Global. Found dead in her dorm room 6 months ago. Ruled a suicide. No foul play suspected. No headlines made. Until now. Within hours of Derek's post, #SayHerName was trending again, but this time with a new face, a new story, and a direct line back to one of the most powerful families in the country. The journal entries, blurred for privacy, leaked to an investigative reporter from The Guardian. Clarissa confirmed their accuracy. A former HR manager vouched for Kiana's complaints. And a buried memo, quietly obtained by Mel, revealed she had filed a formal grievance against her supervisor just weeks before she died. The complaint had been addressed internally. No action taken. Derek sat in the conference room of their off-site war room, staring at the headline on Mel's laptop. Another casualty of corporate silence? Former Walsh intern leaves trail of racism, gaslighting before death. Mel didn't speak. Neither did Derek. They both knew this had changed everything. This wasn't just corporate warfare anymore. This was life and death. That night, Camille called him again. He picked up before the second ring. I read about the girl, she said softly. He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. I keep thinking about her parents, she went on. How they must have felt, thinking she was finally going to make it. She did make it, Derek said. They just buried her before she could prove it. Camille's voice was steadier now. Then don't let them bury her story, too. I won't. Promise me. I promise. He meant it. And he knew what that meant, no more waiting for the Walshes to crumble under public shame. They had to be dismantled, piece by piece. 2 days later, Derek and Mel met with Elijah Lewis again. This time, in a conference room in Midtown. With them were lawyers, 2 representatives from a civil rights legal fund, and a document folder labeled Class Action, Lewis et al. v. Walsh Global. Elijah signed the papers with a trembling hand. When it was done, he pushed them forward and looked Derek in the eye. "This won't bring her back," he said. "No," Derek agreed. "But it'll make sure they never do this to another Kiana again." The lawsuit filing hit the media like a grenade. Within hours, 3 other former interns came forward publicly. 2 former employees of color joined. The list kept growing. And at the center of it all, the tape. The memo. The expendable founder deck. Every document now evidence. Every joke and casual cruelty now a stain on public record. The Walsh family issued another statement. It was cold. Clinical. "We are deeply saddened by recent events. We categorically deny any wrongdoing. Our commitment to diversity remains unwavering." It fooled no one. By week's end, a dozen brands cut ties with Walsh Global. Political allies went silent. A board member resigned. Protests formed outside their headquarters in Chicago. And behind the scenes? Marshall Walsh offered Derek a private settlement. 9 figures. Clean slate. No admission of guilt. Full NDA. Derek laughed when he read the offer. "They really think I built all this just to get paid?" Mel shrugged. "That's how they see the world. Everything's a price tag." He slid the document across the table and stood up. "They can keep their check. I'm taking their legacy." The next morning, Derek called a press conference. No stage this time. No velvet curtain. Just the street outside Walsh Global's headquarters. Concrete. Protest signs. Faces. He stood in front of the crowd with a mic in one hand and Kiana's journal in the other. This is what accountability looks like. Not in backrooms. Not in court filings. Out here. In the open. To anyone who's ever been silenced, your voice matters. Your story matters. Your life matters. And to the ones who hide behind money and lawyers? This is your reckoning. Not because we hate you. But because we see you now. He looked out at the faces. You want to fix this country? Start by fixing the rooms where power forgets who it answers to. Behind him, protesters cheered. Chants echoed. And for the first time, Derek didn't feel alone in the fight. He felt surrounded. Protected. Carried. That night, Derek and Mel walked through Harlem, quiet for once. He stopped in front of a small storefront with boarded windows and a faded for lease sign. "What is this?" Mel asked. "My next move," he said. She raised a brow. "A coffee shop? A startup incubator. For black founders. No gatekeepers. No handouts. Just space to build." Mel looked at the empty space, then at him. "You really don't know how to stop, do you?" Derek smiled, tired but sure. "Not when I've got this much to fix." She nodded. "Then let's build it." Somewhere across the city, Marshall Walsh stared at a screen showing the latest poll numbers on his planned Senate run. The numbers were falling. The donations had dried up. The press had turned. And for the first time in a long time, no one answered when he called. He shut the laptop. Rubbed his face. His wife entered the room quietly. "How bad is it?" He didn't answer. Because for the first time in his life, Marshall Walsh understood. This time, the door wasn't going to open for him. Rain tapped against Derek's office windows like fingers urging him to rest. He hadn't slept. Not really. But exhaustion didn't feel like a problem anymore. Not compared to what was moving now. The lawsuit was snowballing. 17 plaintiffs. Former interns. Associates. A few white employees too, ones who had been pressured to toe the line, one even threatened with termination for calling out discriminatory practices. Kiana's story had cracked something open. And now it wouldn't close. Derek sat at his desk, scrolling through another set of emails. A black founder in Atlanta who'd once pitched to the Walsh family, only to be told they already had enough DEI initiatives. A woman from Detroit with audio recordings of her dismissal after raising harassment claims. A former exec from one of Walsh Global's European subsidiaries who claimed the company funneled millions into shell firms, some tied to political lobbying groups. Each message was a page in a book he hadn't meant to write. But now that it was open, he had to finish it. Mel stepped into the room without knocking. She looked tired too, but energized. She had that look she always got right before they made a big move. "You need to see this." She handed him her phone. On the screen, a headline. SEC launches formal investigation into Walsh Global's financial practices after whistleblower tips. Derek's heart didn't race. He didn't even flinch. He just exhaled and said, "It's starting." "They're panicking," Mel said. "You should see Marshall's interview from this morning. Said he's stepping away from public ambitions to focus on family." Derek set the phone down. Translation, hiding from subpoenas. Mel nodded. "And you? What's your move?" He leaned back. "We're gonna need more room." "For what?" "For what comes after." They leased the Harlem storefront that week. By Friday, painters were scraping off old signage, and electricians were running wire through the floor. Mel stood in the middle of the open space, clipboard in hand, already assigning rooms: pitch lab, podcast studio, legal clinic, meditation room. "Don't roll your eyes," she said when she saw Derek smirk at that last one. "You think you're invincible, but your blood pressure's been riding the rails since February." "I'm not invincible," he said. "I'm just not done." She stared at him for a beat longer than usual. "You know, you could walk away. You've already won. Marshall's finished. The deal's dead. You could disappear. Live a little. Let this be enough." He shook his head. "That's what they expect. A flash. A fire. Then silence. They don't expect foundation." Mel's lips twitched into the closest thing she had to a smile. "Good answer." The next major blow came from a place no one expected: the New York Times. An op-ed written by a former Walsh global investor, white, male, mid-60s, titled, "I Backed a Toxic Empire. Derek Cole Made Me See It." The piece didn't just admit wrongdoing. It detailed it. Meetings where urban outreach was mocked. Memos encouraging optics hires. Strategy sessions where Camille's image was discussed as a potential branding tool. And then the closing paragraph. "We don't need more black founders to make it in our world. We need to make a world they no longer need to survive. Derek Cole isn't a disruptor. He's a damn correction." It went viral before noon. Derek read it twice. Then walked to the porch of his mother's house, the copy still in hand. Camille was in her chair, blanket over her knees, cup of chamomile steaming. "You read this?" he asked. She took the printout. Skimmed the title. "Read the first line." Then she handed it back. "I don't need to read it. I saw it coming 20 years ago." He sat beside her, folded the paper in his lap. She glanced at him. "You think they're really sorry?" "No. But you think they're scared?" He nodded. She sipped her tea. "Good. Let them stay scared for a while." But the biggest turn was still to come. A week later, Derek received an anonymous email. No name. Just a burner address and a .zip file attachment labeled Walsh_Foundation_offshore_accounts.zip. He stared at it for a long time. Mel was against opening it. So was his legal team. But Derek didn't believe in fear anymore. Not when people like Kiana had paid with their lives. He opened the file. Inside, bank statements. Wire transfers. Undocumented shell companies. Political donations disguised as charitable grants. One line item stood out. $4.3 million, Black Talent Pipeline Research Fund, offshore account, Cayman, beneficiary, M. Walsh. He stared at the screen. They'd used black diversity programs to launder money. That was the final line. Derek picked up the phone and called Clarissa. She answered on the first ring. "I need you to look at something," he said. That night, Derek couldn't sleep. He stood at his window again, Harlem stretching out in the dark. He thought about his dad. About Kiana. About every time his mother had pulled double shifts to keep them fed. About how long black families had been surviving systems designed to chew them up. He wasn't interested in survival anymore. He wanted to end the system itself. And the Walshes had just handed him the match. The next morning, Derek walked into the war room with the offshore files in one hand and his jaw set like stone. Mel looked up from her laptop. "You opened it." "I did." She raised an eyebrow. "And?" "They were siphoning money out of their own diversity initiatives. Using nonprofit grants to funnel millions offshore." Mel swore under her breath. "That's not just corruption. That's federal time." Derek dropped a printed summary onto the table. Clarissa verified the internal codes. She said there were accounts she was told never to touch. These match. Mel read silently, then looked up, more serious than he'd ever seen her. "You realize what this means, right?" "Yeah. They're not just guilty of racism or corporate sabotage. This is financial fraud. Wire fraud. Tax evasion. Political corruption. Real time, Derek." He nodded. "It's beyond us now." She closed her laptop. "So what's the play?" "We hand it off. Full disclosure. Feds. SEC, IRS. And we go public. Let them know it's coming." Mel stared at him. "You're going to break them. For real this time." "They broke Kiana," he said. "They tried to break my mother." His voice dropped, heavy with something older than revenge. "I'm just making sure they don't break the next one." By noon, Derek had forwarded the files to a team of federal investigators through a secure channel Clarissa helped set up. 2 hours later, he was on the phone with a lead agent. "Where did you get this?" the man asked, voice tight. "Anonymous leak. We've confirmed its validity." The agent exhaled. "You realize this will become a criminal case." Possibly international. I do. Do you want to be a witness, Mr. Cole? Derek didn't hesitate. I want to be the reason they can't buy silence anymore. The next week moved like a controlled demolition. First came the subpoenas. Federal agents raided a Walsh Foundation satellite office in Chicago. Cameras caught boxes being wheeled out. Next, the boardroom leaks. 5 Walsh executives resigned in 48 hours. Shareholders started dumping stock. Private equity firms distanced themselves overnight. Then came the real hammer, a sealed indictment against Marshall Walsh and 2 other top officers. The charges included wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and misappropriation of federal grant funds. The indictment wasn't unsealed yet, but the press could smell blood. On a cool Thursday morning, the Washington Post dropped a headline that said it all. The empire built on diversity lies, the fall of the Walsh legacy. Derek read it in the Harlem incubator, surrounded by interns building their first apps. Mel handed him a coffee. He didn't drink it. Just held it for a moment, watching the kids work, young, brilliant, free. What now? She asked. He looked at her, tired but calm. Now we build. Later that day, Derek was asked to speak at a youth summit in Brooklyn. He almost said no. He hadn't prepared. He was still coming down from the storm. But Camille had once told him, when you've got something real to say, you don't need a speech, just a pulse. So he showed up. The gym was packed with high school students from the Bronx, Bed-Stuy, Queens. Young, black, brilliant. The future they kept saying didn't exist. He stood on stage, no podium, just a mic. I'm not here because I'm special, he said. I'm here because someone finally said enough. He scanned the room. I used to think the worst thing that could happen to me was losing a deal. Losing money. Losing power. He paused. But the worst thing? Is standing in a room full of people who don't see your humanity and choosing to stay quiet anyway. He told them about Kiana. About Camille. About the quiet sacrifices that built this country but were never allowed to own it. And then he told them the truth. I'm not your hero, he said. I'm your warning shot. Because the system that broke them can't survive people like us who learn how to fight back. Silence. Then thunderous applause. Not the polite kind. The real kind. The kind that came from somewhere deep. From recognition. That night, he came home late. Camille was waiting, reading on the couch in her slippers. He sat beside her and rested his head on her shoulder. They didn't speak for a long time. Then she whispered, "You made them see you." Derek shook his head gently. "No. I made them see you." Camille blinked, surprised. "You were never invisible, Ma. They just didn't want to see where I came from. What built me? Who raised me?" She smiled and kissed his forehead. Outside, Harlem pulsed soft in the dark. A new kind of quiet. Not peace. But justice. And it was enough. For now. 2 weeks passed. The indictment was unsealed. Marshall Walsh was hit with 7 federal charges. The headline on CNN read like a movie poster. Marshall Walsh indicted, $18 million in stolen federal funds, fraud scheme tied to fake diversity programs. Francine Walsh was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. She had signed off on several community outreach initiatives that funneled money into offshore trusts. She claimed ignorance. The document said otherwise. Derek watched it unfold quietly from his Harlem incubator, where 24 young founders were pitching beta prototypes of everything from AI healthcare tools to food delivery for underserved neighborhoods. The room smelled like fresh paint and cheap coffee. He wouldn't have it any other way. "You want to go on MSNBC tonight?" Mel asked, phone in hand. "Primetime slot." He didn't look up from the student's pitch. "No." She blinked. "You sure?" "Let the Walshes have the screen," Derek said. "I've got work to do." But silence didn't last. 3 days later, Camille Cole was approached in a grocery store parking lot by a reporter who shoved a mic in her face. "Mrs. Cole, any comment on your son bringing down one of the most powerful families in American business?" She didn't blink. "I didn't raise a destroyer," she said calmly. "I raised a builder. He just had to clear the rubble first." That quote went viral. Again. Someone put it on a t-shirt. Another turned it into a mural in South LA. And still, Derek said little. The work didn't stop. His incubator, named the Hallway in honor of Kiana's journal, had received over 400 applications in 10 days. Corporate donors, most of them anonymous, began sending unsolicited checks. He returned them all. Instead, he opened a community investment fund, the Kiana Lewis Foundation. Structured so that black students could apply for seed money without having to pitch to people who didn't look like them. No panels. No polished decks. Just ideas. Just belief. But while Derek stayed grounded, the Walsh empire collapsed in real time. The family trust was frozen. Francine resigned from 3 boards. Their foundation, once a staple of charity galas and political fundraisers, was under full IRS audit. Whispers circulated that even their Manhattan townhouse had been quietly listed. Mel texted him the link with one word. Oof. Still, Derek didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just moved forward. Until the one call he wasn't expecting came in. He almost didn't pick it up. Unknown number. But he recognized the area code. Aspen. He answered. Derek. It was Marshall. His voice sounded hoarse. Smaller. I don't know what you want, Derek said flatly. I don't want anything. He hesitated. I wanted to say sorry. For what I said. For what we did. Derek closed his eyes. You don't get to do that. I know. But I'm doing it anyway. Silence. I watched your speech, Marshall went on. At the youth summit. It was powerful. You know what's powerful? Derek said, his voice steady. My mother walking into your gallery and being treated like a maid. After everything she survived. After everything she gave me. And you smirked while your wife humiliated her. Marshall didn't respond. You should sit with that, Derek said. Not in a statement. Not in a confessional interview. Just sit with it. Feel it. He hung up. Later that night, Derek found Camille on the stoop, sipping ginger tea, watching the quiet street. I got a call today, he said. From him? He nodded. She sipped. And? He apologized. Camille chuckled softly. They always do. After the curtain falls. He sounded like he meant it. That's not the point, she said. The point is he said it too late. They sat in silence. Then she looked at him sideways. You ready to take a break now? He gave her a crooked smile. Maybe a short one. Good, she said. Because you've got a keynote in Oakland next week. He groaned. I thought you said take a break. She raised her mug. After Oakland. 3 blocks away, a girl named Zuri sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, watching open the door for the 5th time. She was 16. Brilliant. Afraid. But no longer alone. She paused the video on Camille's face, the moment she said. You blended in so well. Say what you meant. Zuri whispered to the screen, I will. She opened her laptop. Started writing her first pitch. And somewhere deep in the bones of the city, another door cracked open. Derek stood backstage in Oakland, peering through the side curtain at the packed auditorium. This wasn't like the press conferences or investor summits. This wasn't slick and suit heavy. It was raw. Real. Kids in hoodies. Teachers. Community organizers. Founders who never went to college but built apps from public libraries. Parents holding babies. Elders in the front row, their eyes already wet. The MC finished her intro. And now, the man who lit the match and built the new house, please welcome, Derek Cole. Applause like thunder. Derek walked onto the stage with no slides, no script. Just breath and memory. He paused at the mic, looked out. They were waiting. I used to think power was something other people gave you, he began. A seat at their table. A check. A title. He shook his head. But real power doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't wear a mask. It doesn't blend in. He scanned the crowd. Power is when your mother walks into a room and doesn't bow her head. When the people they tried to erase become the ones writing the rules. A pause. I'm not here to talk about the Walshes. I'm here because of what came after. Because we're building something bigger than a takedown. He told them about the hallway. About Kiana. About how his mother used to buy groceries in cash so she could control every cent. About what it felt like to be called a CEO in rooms that still looked through him. And then he said the thing that landed in the bones of every person listening. They thought I was their token. But I was the test. And they failed. The crowd stood. Some shouted. Some cried. But Derek wasn't finished. So now, he said, I'm not asking anyone to open the door anymore. He stepped back from the mic, voice low, but strong enough to carry. I'm building a world where we don't knock. Afterward, in the green room, Camille was waiting. You did good, she said, adjusting the collar of his shirt. Even without your notes. He smiled. You always said I talk too much anyway. She leaned in. I said you talk loud. Took you a while to figure out how to say something worth listening to. They both laughed. Then a knock. A volunteer peeked in. Mr. Cole? There's a young girl asking if she can speak with you. She brought a notebook. Derek glanced at his mother. She raised her eyebrows. Go. Let the next one speak. He followed the volunteer into the hallway. There, standing alone near a folding chair, was a girl no older than 17. Locked hair pulled back. Nervous fingers gripping a spiral-bound notebook. Hi, she said. I'm Zuri. Hi, Zuri. I saw your documentary. And I read everything about Kiana. And your mom. And what happened. Anne. She took a deep breath. I wrote an app. Well, I started it. It connects students who've been pushed out of gifted programs with mentors who've been through it. I don't have much. But I thought if I showed it to you. She trailed off. Waiting. Derek smiled gently. Let me see it. She handed him the notebook. Pages of wireframes, user flows, testimonials. Handwritten. Some pages smudged. One sticky note with a quote, I'm still stuck in the hallway. He closed the notebook carefully. You're not stuck anymore. Zuri blinked. What do you mean? He turned to the volunteer. Get her a scholarship to the hallway. Full ride. And a mentor. Zuri's hands flew to her mouth. Her knees buckled a little. Wait, really? Really? She grinned. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. He shook her hand. No. Thank you. For showing up. As she walked away, Derek watched her blend into the crowd, only now, with her head held high. That night, back in his hotel room, he sat at the window with his phone, watching the lights of Oakland blink like stars that never fell. A new email pinged in. From a former tech exec he didn't know. I watched everything you did. I used to stay quiet in those meetings. Not anymore. I'm in. Let me know how I can help. Then another. Your story gave me the courage to report my company. They fired me. But I finally slept last night. And another. I just enrolled in a CS program. I thought I was too old. But you said we don't knock. So I'm walking in. Derek closed the phone and leaned back in the chair, eyes to the ceiling. He remembered that first night, the gallery, the marble floors, his mother's voice cracking. The deal on the line. The cameras. The rage. And now here he was. $900 million lost. Thousands of people found. A broken door replaced by a building with no locks. Far away, in a sterile federal courtroom, Marshall Walsh sat beside his lawyer as a judge read the charges aloud. He didn't look up. No one came to the hearing. There were no cameras. Just silence. And in Harlem, under a rising sun, Camille Cole opened the front door of her brownstone to pick up the morning paper. The cover showed her son, standing on stage in Oakland, fist gently raised, mouth open mid-sentence. The headline? The man who burned the old world down, and built a door for the rest of us. She folded it quietly, tucked it under her arm, and went back inside. Spring came to Harlem with the kind of softness that sneaks up on a city. The trees outside Camille Cole's brownstone bloomed with cautious pinks. The block, once familiar with too much noise or none at all, now hummed with something steadier. Inside the hallway, the energy was constant. Students moved between rooms, arguing about algorithms, planning community clinics, testing code, rewriting dreams in real time. Derek walked the space quietly, nodding to people he didn't know yet, shaking hands with interns whose names he was still learning. The building was full now. Not just with projects, but with possibility. On a quiet Wednesday morning, he stood alone in the main corridor. The walls were lined with framed photos, every founder who'd launched something from this space. Near the center, under a simple spotlight, hung a portrait of Kiana Lewis. No caption. Just her eyes. Her presence. A reminder. Mel approached him from behind, sipping her tea. You know you could have taken a sabbatical. Bought a house in Nice. Disappeared. Derek smiled. Not yet. She gestured around the room. They still try to offer you checks? Every week. And you still turning them down? He looked at her. They tried to buy my silence once. I made them pay for it instead. Mel nodded, like she wasn't surprised. The new girl, Zuri, she just launched the beta. I heard. She's calling it Unlock. He paused. Let that sit. Good name, he said. Mel checked her watch. You've got a radio interview in 20. I'll skip it. Good, she said, smirking. I was about to tell you to anyway. They stood in comfortable silence. Then she asked, you ever think about what would have happened if your mom hadn't gone with you that night? He turned toward the window, watching sunlight catch on the glass. Every day, he said. But I think some moments are meant to break things open. You don't choose them. They just arrive. And what about the Walshes? He shrugged. They'll be fine. People like them always land somewhere soft. But they'll never be what they were. And you? Derek looked out at the street. A group of kids walked past the window, laughing loud, not afraid of being seen. I never wanted to be the story, he said. Just the reason someone else believed they could write their own. Later that week, Camille hosted a small dinner. Just family. Close friends. A few of the young founders from the hallway. She made too much food. Everyone ate too much of it. After dessert, Derek helped her wash dishes. Got a letter in the mail, she said. Another magazine feature? No, she handed it to him. The envelope was plain, the handwriting careful. He opened it. It was from Elijah Lewis. Dear Camille, I don't know what healing looks like, not fully. But I know it starts with someone who refuses to forget. Your son gave my daughter a kind of justice I never imagined we'd see. She lives through what he built. Through what you raised. Thank you. For everything. Elijah. Derek read it twice. Quiet. Camille dried her hands and kissed his cheek. You did good, baby. He looked down. You still miss Dad? Every day. You think he'd be proud? She touched his face. He'd have been furious that it took this long. But proud? Hell yes. That night, Derek walked through Harlem alone. No entourage. No press. Just him. No suit. No spotlight. He passed the mural of his mother, painted on the side of a school. The quote beneath her portrait read, "You blended in so well. Say what you meant." He kept walking. Not toward an office. Not toward a stage. But forward. Into a world he was helping rebuild, door by door, hand by hand. And behind him? Footsteps. Dozens. Hundreds. A generation no longer waiting to be let in. A movement that no longer asked. They were building. And Derek Cole had made sure the first wall was already down.